All right, we're turning our attention to football on the SportsMax Zone. Well, the second round of matches in the Ray and Nephew Jamaica Premier League came to an end in the second city on Monday night. And as we've grown to expect, the action on hand was nothing short of thrilling. In the first of a doubleheader at the Montego Bay Sports Complex, Arnett Gardens required the services of both their marquee marksmen, Fabian Reed and Warner Brown, to secure a 2-0 victory over Vere United. The win solidified Arnett as the second-place team after 26 matches. Meanwhile, the team they have been chasing for practically the entire campaign, Mount Pleasant, they dropped points for only the second time in 17 matches, playing to a 1-1 draw against host Montego Bay United in the final match of the round. Well, Mount Pleasant took a first-half lead through an own goal by O'Dane Nish, but were reduced to 10 men on the stroke of half-time as Deshaun Anglin was controversially given his marching orders. Montego Bay equalized through Johan Weatherly early in the second half, but couldn't find a winner. Well, both head coaches, new Mobe boss Paul Teagat Davis and Theodore Tapper Whitmore of Mount Pleasant, spoke after the matchup.
Second half, we should have won the game with the 10-man down, but let's be more patient. I see we start moving the ball around, spread wing to wing, but start giving the ball, but, we're a quality team, well-organized team, and so, what can I say, to get a point?
I'm not someone who wants to complain about officiating, but I think he had taken something from what the fans came here to see this afternoon. But again, after we went down, very pleased with our team performance, to stand tall, show character this afternoon and came out with a point.
Well, following that action, here are the full results and the table after the round. Cavalier getting that win against Chapelton Maroons. Don Beholden, a 3-2 against Humble Lion. A 2-2 draw between Harbourview and Tivoli Gardens. Racing United, 1 goal extra to seal the win against Malines United. Waterhouse, easy, 1-0 against Portmore United. Arnett, that 2-0 win against Vere United. And the 1-1 draw between Montego Bay and Mount Pleasant. Well, this is how the table looks now. Mount Pleasant at the top on 62 points. Arnett in second on 54. What about Montego Bay United, who has been firing? They're on third position. Of course, Cavalier in fourth. Portmore United in fifth. And Waterhouse round out the top 6. Vere United still struggling at the bottom of the table, along with Humble Lion. Well, with us in studio to review the state of the JPL after the second round, you guessed it right, our in-house football analyst, Liz J. Williams. So, Liz, Montego Bay United getting the opportunity to actually defeat Mount Pleasant, and I say that because Mount Pleasant one man down, but didn't capitalize on it. What did you make of that match, and is the result, I like to ask this because I was not there, is the result a fair showing of what happened at the match?
Well, firstly, I would say it's relatively fair because it was, I'm not going to say it was the most exciting encounter between both teams, not what we would have expected even before the red card. And then after the red card, I think it was just Mount Pleasant trying to batten down the hatches and try and leave the game with something, especially after conceding early in the second half. So I do think that it's relatively fair. There weren't too many clear-cut goal-scoring opportunities in the second half. So I think based on how the play played out, I do think that it was a fair result that won out.
Yeah, I listened to a couple interviews because coaches, tend to give different people different interviews after the match. And Paul Teagat Davis, in one particular interview, was asked about the back-to-back draws for Montego Bay United. His response was, it was a better draw than the one versus Racing. So he said that. And then he went on to say, the team has to keep working and scoring goals. What do you make of coach's response? And do you think it's just as easy as, well, you need to start scoring goals?
Well, I mean, it is that easy. It's easy for him to say as a coach because that's where they've been lacking a bit over in his tenure. Only 1 goal over the 2 games. But I think that they'll be perfectly fine goal scoring wise. I think, as he said in the SportsMax interview, he said that these are all good football players. He doesn't need to teach them how to play football. They know how to put the ball in the back of net, how to build up. So I wouldn't be too worried about Montego Bay United going forward. Obviously, they want to break into that top 2 and try and find a way to get that automatic playoff spot. But I think that they'll be perfectly fine. It's just going to be a process of adaptation with Miss Coach Davis in, and let's see how he can adjust the team to his liking, because they're going to have to learn an entirely new system.
Yeah, speaking about that, the red card now for Deshaun Anglin. Red, too harsh. Maybe it should have been a yellow. What say you?
Yeah, I think it was entirely too harsh, especially the type of game that it is. It's really unfortunate that usually referees are quite lenient with certain calls because they don't want to ruin the flow of the game and things like that, especially for a second yellow, how quickly he made up his mind as well, didn't take any assistance from his assistant referee. I think it was a poor call, and it definitely impacted the quality of the game, especially in the second half.
Arnett Gardens and Vere United played in the opening game yesterday. Of course, Arnett winning by 2-0. I'm just going to get right to it. Will Vere get relegated this season?
It's looking likely. It's looking likely. I'm not going to lie. They have a very talented team, so I don't like to say up front that they're going to get relegated, but based on the fact that they can keep a clean sheet if their life depended on it, and that's really what you need when you need to batten down the hatches and grind out results. They concede goals in all types of ways, good goals, bad goals. They just leave so much space for the opposition. So it would be difficult for me to say that they won't get relegated, especially based on what I've seen from the other teams. So unfortunately for them at this current moment, there is still a lot of football to be played. I would lean towards them going and facing the job.
And in terms of their inability to keep clean sheets, is that purely down to the system, the style of play, how Craig Butler likes to play? Because I'm just looking at Craig Butler over the years. I think his teams generally have defensive frailties, but they generally also score a lot of goals. That's not happening in the Premier League with Vere.
Yeah, but I think that's the case for Lenny Hyde teams as well. Generally speaking, over the years, both of the coaches, one similarity that they do have is they focus a lot on their in-possession play, and they try to overwhelm teams, and they don't bend or break their style of play to suit any opposition. So, and I think that's coming to bite them time and time again. Both Coach Butler and Coach Hyde have mentioned the fact that the team isn't fit. They haven't been playing like they're fit. They're not running enough, and that's systematic. So I think in terms of what we've been seeing tactically and what we've been seeing in terms of the overall effort of the players, I think that's those two reasons coupled together why we're seeing such a poor defensive effort, because I can't imagine that Lenny Hyde or Coach Craig Butler has sent out the players out there and said we're going to give every opposition 30 yards worth of space in front of our goal to do anything that they want with it. So unfortunately for them, that's how it's panning out, and unfortunately for them, they haven't been a very good unit this season.
Yeah, I must apologize, by the way, because I spoke of Craig Butler, and sometimes I just forget that Lenny Hyde is actually the coach of this Vere United team. My apologies for that. Tyreek McGee, he's come into this Vere United team. He scored once. What has his impact been like? How impressed, if any at all, have you been with what you've seen from him in the few games he's played?
I think he's been relatively all right. Naturally, with a national player so highly lauded in Tyreek McGee, you expect a bit more. But I do think that he is playing within himself a bit. He knows that he won't be here for long. Well, he assumes that he won't be here for long, I should say. And I do think that he isn't necessarily putting out the strongest effort. I'm not saying that he's not playing to his highest level on purpose or anything like that. He is putting out effort, and he is trying his, well, I would say most of his best. But I still do think he's playing within himself a bit, playing not quite at the tempo as the rest of the league. But that's just something he's always been doing.
Why would you think he would be playing within himself, and explain within himself? So I know over time there has been a critique of his game that he doesn't track back enough, he doesn't do enough defensive work? Are you speaking about that specifically, or are we talking about something else now?
Just at the pace at which he's playing, I think that when you watch the games, I've seen Tyreek McGee willingly take over games. I've seen him, and that's really what he should be doing. Because if we're looking at it from a talent perspective, what we should be expecting perspective, he should easily be the best player in the league. But he hasn't been that so far. I'm not saying that that's entirely his fault, because he is playing with one of the worst teams and defenses in the league at current. So I'm not saying that's entirely his fault, but I don't see that same fire and willingness I would see from him. If you were to randomly put Tyreek McGee in an English Premier League team tomorrow, he's not going to be turning up the same intensity and performance that we'll be seeing from him for Very United yesterday, for example, is what I'm trying to say.
You're saying that if you put him in a better team, you will get more intensity and more quality from him. Is that what you're saying? Yes,
but if you put him in a team that he feels, or people generally feel, there's more to play for, then we'll see more intensity and
But
quality.
there's a lot to play for, though.
Of course. But
they're trying to avoid relegation. They're on 19 points. Just, 3 points outside of, well, not outside, they are inside relegation. 3 points from, 12th position.
Yeah, of course. But as I said, as I started, when you just asked me the question, I think that in his mind, and probably rightfully so, he won't be here whether Very United stay up or go down next season. So he's in Jamaica playing right now to maintain his fitness. He doesn't have anything to gain from a reputation standpoint.
So you think his mind might be elsewhere?
Yes, definitely. I won't say no. I think his mind is definitely elsewhere.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. But I'll leave that for now. Let's talk about Arnett Gardens. They're finding ways to win even when they are not great. I don't suspect, from what I saw at least, that they were tested significantly last night by Very United. It seemed more like a routine win, in all honesty.
You know, I don't agree with you on that one. I do think that Very United, especially in the second half, I would say they actually had the better of play. I think Very, overall, they challenged them a lot because, as I said, Very gives teams a lot of space. So sometimes I realize that, especially the really good teams, it's like they're not accustomed to playing with such space. So it can be a little bit off-putting. So a lot of times Arnett found themselves in very promising attacking scenarios and didn't make use of those scenarios as they usually do. But generally speaking, there was like a 20 to 30 minute period in the second half where Veer were creating chances, sustaining pressure well, and then Michael Forbes gave that goal away. And I say that's pretty sad for Michael Forbes, because I think he was asked to do so much from a defensive point of view for Veer, and he was doing it very admirably. But just that one mistake, and Arnett went and made the result look much prettier than I think it ought to be. So
you're saying it wasn't routine?
No, it wasn't routine. I don't think, for most teams, I don't think that's the competitiveness of the league shining through. I don't think any team, it's very rare that you're going to see a routine victory. I think all 14 teams, as opposed to previous seasons, give a very good account of themselves in every game.
The one thing I'll say, it probably was the most routine win I've seen Arnett have in a while. I'll leave
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and one of the things assistant coach Fabian Taylor spoke about after the match is the fact that there are 13 games to go, Lish, and it's very important that they manage the players. It's something that, you know, I spoke about at the top of the show, maybe not in these exact words, but still, 13 games is a lot of games to go. Coaches are already thinking, we got to manage the players in order to maximize the results.
And that's something that I think Arnett have been doing much better than every other team this season. They have a much deeper squad this season, and they've been rotating the minutes. It's very rare. I don't think I've actually seen it. And at SportsMax do a lot of Arnett Gardens games. I don't think I've seen an Arnett team be the exact same from week to week. There's always some rotation, even if it's a goalkeeper change, even if it's at centre-back where those positions aren't seen as ones where you get exhausted per se, playing week on week. Arnett rotate their squad heavily. Fabian Reid has been fit for quite some time, and he's still getting rotated a lot. We see Warner Brown out of the lineup yesterday. So they have a lot of depth in quality this season, and they're managing it well. all for the playoffs. Their eye, I can guarantee, is all for the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and with 13 games to go, the top 6, do you expect it to be shuffled?
That 6th spot is up for grabs. It's really up for grabs. Waterhouse, they got a good win, I say, against Portmore. I wanted to come on the show and mention specifically what they did defensively against Portmore. That was one of the better defensive setups I've seen in the league this season, how disciplined they were in that 4-4-2 mid-block. I spoke about on commentary a lot. But I think they're in some really poor form going into that game. They actually had the joint worst run of form in the league, generally. And that's awful, losing 5 of their last 6 games. So that win was very timely for them because Racing United are catching some serious heat right now. Yeah. Mikael Ellis is on fire, having scored 6 goals now in his 9 games. I'm not going to toot my own horn because people like to say I love to do that, but Mikael Ellis is playing some really good football.
Who are those people?
You know, just people out on the road.
Oh, okay.
Ricardo Chambers, a lot of people.
I'm not out on the road. I'm right here in the studio. I would say it if I thought so.
So Racing United doing really well. Dumbo Holding, 4 wins in their last 5, and they're now only 5 points away from Waterhouse.
And now is the time to catch steam.
Yeah, exactly. And Tivoli playing really well as well, so close also. So I think the race for the top 6, as it usually is, to be honest, is going to be very tight.
Here's possibly a difficult one. If you had to pick a winner and a loser from the second round, not just in terms of most points gained or fewest points gained, but just in terms of what they did and how that impacts the overall picture, who would be the winner, who would be the loser for you of round 2?
That's an excellent question, Ricardo. I think the winner has to be Mount Pleasant because of their form. They broke the Premier League record for most wins consecutively, winning 11 of their 13 games in the round. 12 of those, they were undefeated for only 1 loss to Harborview. So I think it's hard to say that they weren't the winner of the second round and the loser. That's an excellent question. I would say Humberland, they have been great all season. Veer, they have been great all season. So I would
but
say,
you're just going with the table.
No, I'm not going with the table. I would say my loser in terms of the second round would be Waterhouse because they've played their way into a struggle that they didn't need to have.
Yeah.
I was tempted to say Chapelton, but they're a team in a bit of a limbo, so I won't say them.
And it's not much different a situation from where they started the round.
Exactly.
The fact is, in terms of where Waterhouse find themselves, very different. They were well clear, comfortably in the top 6.
At 1 point, 8 points ahead of 7th place.
There's nothing comfortable about it.
Just goal difference. So
I would like to say Racing would be a very good candidate for winner of the round 2, from being really and truly out of contention for the top 6 to being 3 points behind Waterhouse.
Yeah,
and when you look at how they've done that as well, because a lot of people would say their best player, Ronaldo Biggs, has been injured for the past 5 or 6 games. When you speak about how they've refreshed their team in the January window, losing around 11 players and replacing them with an average age of 20, and then having to rely on new players to come in and play well for them, I think that Racing United is a very good candidate, but I couldn't look past Mount Pleasant just because of the historic things they've done.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Mariah, I think we can finish with him now.
Yeah, you had enough?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, Lish, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time we have JPL.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always here.
All right. Lish Williams there, of course, keeping his pulse on all the football action taking place in Jamaica. It's time for a break.